Sam's, where hair care meets affordability. Visit FantasticSams.com to find one of their 60 SoCal salons near you.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
A bad night for the Clippers. They lost by 18 at home to Minnesota, and at the end of the first quarter, the Clippers watched Kawhi Leonard walk to the locker room. He did not return. The Clippers medical staff said the team's leading scorer is suffering with back spasm. No word yet on whether Kawhi will be able to play Thursday night at Chicago. The Lakers are back in action tonight in Sacramento. Another critical game for the Lakers. They're trying to get into the 8th and final playoff spot in the Western Conference. At the moment, the Lakers are a game and a half behind Dallas. Tip-off time at 7 p.m. on ESPN. UCLA forward Adeem Bona, a 6'10 sophomore from Nigeria, was voted Pac-12 Conference Defensive Player of the Year. Bona averaged 1.8 block shots and played a key role in UCLA, allowing a conference-low 65 points per game. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Climate is king.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we believe that caring for the community means caring about the climate. You might have heard that we announced a pretty bold 12-month, $2 million campaign to do 4 things. Increase climate literacy, turn up the volume on communities of color in the climate conversation, connect everyday people with the resources they need to survive and thrive, and highlight frontline climate justice crusaders of color throughout this year. KBLA Talk 1580 will be bringing you insightful interviews on all of our shows to help raise your climate IQ. Each quarter this year, we will also be hosting free climate events in various communities throughout the city with food, fun, and forward-thinking conversations. Thanks to partners like LADWP, Metro, Caltrans, the Sierra Club, the California Community Foundation, the California Endowment, AQMD, MWD, and more. You'll also be hearing more about a couple of national town halls broadcasting live from Los Angeles, to which you will be invited. And we'll be rolling out a robust social media campaign on all our platforms, as well as an outdoor media campaign, all designed to educate, enlighten, and empower you in our fight for climate justice.
We want cleaner air.
Caring about the community means caring about the climate. At KBLA Talk 1580, we believe that we really can change the world if we care enough. 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 If we care enough.
The smooth sounds of one Wynton Marsalis with his late great father, Ellis Marsalis. That's the Marsalis family, Wynton and Ellis. Where or When is the name of that track, and we don't know where and we don't know when. But none of us gets out of this thing called life alive. In this hour, a conversation with Angela Novas, Chief Medical Officer at the Hospice Foundation of America, about end-of-life care, hospices, and how former President Jimmy Carter and his late wife Rosalind have created a new awareness, a new conversation around this uncomfortable subject for some, but necessary nonetheless. As I said, none of us gets out of here alive, and even though we know that, far too many folk who look like you and me are ill-prepared to properly manage that transition, and so we're going to talk about it in this hour. How about that? Angela, good to have you on this program. How are you today?
I'm fantastic. Thank you for having me and inviting me to join the conversation.
No, it's good to have you on for the conversation. I'm glad we got a few minutes here to sort of work this out over the course of this hour. Let me just start with a couple of broad questions, and we'll work our way into this hour. What's your sense of how many of us, even though, as I said a moment ago, we know that as we get older, we encounter health challenges, and yet so many of us, even though we know it's coming, seem so unprepared to deal with that particular transition. For you, what's that all about?
Yeah, it's remarkably common. Given that we are sentinel and we do know we can anticipate our own deaths, people are very uncomfortable about having those conversations. And sometimes I think they're even more reluctant to have those conversations when they may be appropriate. I think America as a whole has a reluctance to talk about some things. It's not polite conversation, if you will. And despite the fact that most Americans, if you reach out to them and ask, say they want to die at home, most do not. So there is misinformation somewhere there. There is a lack of information that bridges their desire to want to be home with their family in a peaceful, calm environment that brings them comfort and allows family to access them easily in a more hospitable setting, and what actually happens in reality. And that typically happens when people die in the hospital, not from acute trauma or acute illness, but from chronic disease. They are dying in the hospital because the family doesn't know what that person would have wanted because they've never had that conversation.
Let me just ask. I want to make sure I heard you correctly. Does the data tell you that more Americans do or do not want to die at home?
They do.
They do. Okay.
Unequivocally.
Okay.
Most people want to die at home given the choice.
Yeah. Is it how complicated, how difficult is it for that to happen? And I ask that because hospitals are expensive. And in-home care, I got a couple of friends who have parents right now who they're taking care of at home. So hospitals are not cheap. Mm-hmm. In-home care, if I can say it, in-home care, Tavis, is not cheap either. How difficult is it to have a conversation about something that you think you can't afford?
It's very difficult. I mean, financial planning is, of course, part of that conversation.
Right.
So you're right. It's one thing to say, I want to die at home, but if you are, we'll use the Carters as a perfect example. Mm-hmm. He is 99. Mrs. Carter is she 96 mm-hmm. when she died? Mm-hmm. So let's imagine them in the setting that they're in now, right? They have access and wealth and resources that maybe a 99-year-old Mr. Carter and 96-year-old Mrs. Carter would have if they were living rurally. Their nearest relatives, their family lived on another coast or in another state, and she was trying to take care of him, or he was trying to take care of her without those resources.
Mm-hmm. No, I get it.
Right?
Yeah, and that's my point. So many people don't have those resources. Let's come to that in a moment. Talking about resources specifically, the Carters are a great example. But as we know, they have resources, and that's what I was driving toward. For those who don't, I just think it makes it more difficult to have a conversation, even though you want to die at home, and the data says that most Americans do. If you don't have the resources to do that, then it makes it more difficult to get into a conversation about how that would even happen. But I digress for now. We're talking about end-of-life care. We're talking about hospices and the conversation, thankfully, that the Carters, President Carter is still living at 99. Rosalynn Carter, as you heard Angela say a moment ago, passed away at 96. But it's a conversation that we have to have, as uncomfortable as it might be. And we're going to have it when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
This is getting good.
Yeah, man.
Tavis Smiley continues when we come forward.
Hey y'all, Mona Swain here from Target's new YouTube series, My Cart is Full, where we feature Black founders and creators highlighting their connection to our community. As an actor and content creator, I love using my voice to inspire young Black women who look like me. When it comes to feeding my shine, seeing myself reflected in Black-owned and founded products at Target brings me joy. Together, we are Black Beyond Measure. Learn more at target.com/Black Beyond Measure.
Cookie wants to be a professional wrestler.
I'm Cookie Serratos, and I'm 11 years old.
She also wants to win all the medals. That's why Cookie and her family make every day count, squeezing out her best with Go-Go Squeeze.
Okay, Cookie, let's break for a Go-Go Squeeze.
Go-Go Squeeze fruit-on-the-go pouches are a nutritious snack made from 100% fruit with no sugar added.
Call Cookie!
Because when you nurture your kids, you squeeze out the best in them. Squeeze out the best with Go-Go Squeeze. Not a low-calorie food. Products range from 11 to 13 grams of sugar and 60 to 70 calories per serving.
Imagine with me here for a minute the most beautiful panoramic setting. Maybe it's an endless ocean, waves crashing on a beach, or a crystal clear mountain lake, peaceful and quiet. Or maybe it's just little kids playing in the park down the street. Wherever your imagination takes you, now imagine right smack in the middle of this perfect picture, a piece of litter. Just one piece right there in the middle of it all. Doesn't exactly fit, does it? In fact, even though it's just one piece, now it's all you can see. That one piece ruins everything. And that's the thing about litter. It doesn't take much to ruin everything. One thing's for sure, it simply does not belong anywhere in California. So here's the good news. If we work together, we will change it. We don't have to let litter, even just one piece, ruin your perfect picture. Not anymore, not ever again. Clean California, zero litter is the goal. Brought to you by Caltrans and CleanCA.com.
Pizza's here. Oh, great. I'd love some, but I'm worried about my stomach issues.
If you're worried about having diarrhea, gas, bloating, stomach pain, or loose, oily stools, it may not just be stomach issues. It could be a condition called exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, or EPI. With EPI, the pancreas doesn't release enough enzymes to break down food, but EPI is manageable. Use the symptom checker on identifyepi.com and talk to your doctor. That's identifyepi.com. Sponsored by AbbVie.
Getting quality employees to fill positions in your company is essential, but finding those people can be a major hassle unless you use ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter makes finding quality people a breeze. ZipRecruiter's advanced technology identifies candidates with the right skills, sends you great matches, then you can easily invite them to apply. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. See for yourself. Go to ZipRecruiter.com/free to try ZipRecruiter for free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
Who do you trust to get at the truth? Tavis Smiley. That's who. The conversation continues right now.
He does indeed with Angela Novas, who's Chief Medical Officer at Hospice Foundation of America. Before I get back into our conversation, where we're back into it now, but before I go deeper, I should say, Angela, into our dialogue, tell me about the Hospice Foundation of America and what you all do there every day.
Sure. We're a small organization. We are a completely not-for-profit foundation that's been around for over 40 years now. We predominantly produce educational material that's both public and professional facing about death, dying, and grief. And we also sort of reach out to communities. We partner with researchers in looking at diverse communities and how we can get information and education out to those populations. We have a service that's somewhat unique in that we have an Ask an Expert platform where members of the public or even professionals can reach out to us about any of the topics that we cover, particularly hospice care, accessing care, understanding the benefit, or finding grief support in their community. And certainly we help them free of charge, and that's a donation-funded service that we offer throughout the United States.
Yeah. I want to ask you, as you move through this hour, about those diverse communities that you just represented, or just referenced, rather, a moment ago. But before I do that, though, let me just, you've been at this for a while, doing this work, and I am curious, just on a personal level, as to what your takeaways are. What are the lessons that you've learned? Watching people, talking to people, working with people, as they try to process these end-of-life issues for loved ones. I'm going to just stand back for a second and just have you give me a sense of what you've learned about the way that people do or don't process these sort of end-of-life issues.
So as an end-of-life nurse practitioner who's worked in hospice and palliative care, It disappoints me, frankly, that when I am the first person in that individual family's healthcare journey to have brought up end-of-life care and hospice. And I'm often broaching that topic during one of their most fragile times in their life. Some people, it comes as a surprise, and they feel somehow let down that this conversation wasn't had sooner. And sometimes people are very relieved that finally somebody is having a conversation with them about something that they feared in their own mind was upcoming, but they were waiting for somebody else to start that conversation. People with very serious illness will wait for the doctor to bring it up, or the specialist, or the nurse. They're waiting for somebody to say what they know and validate what they feel in their heart and mind is a potential outcome.
In what ways have the Carters renewed this conversation, advanced this conversation? You tell me.
It's been really interesting, actually, that it has increased the conversation about end-of-life care, end-of-life conversations. It's reignited the conversation about some of the myths, which, it can be a little frustrating that some of these myths still exist, but the opportunity to have an open dialogue about those myths is beneficial, and it does allow us to try and reinforce some of those misconceptions about what hospice is, what it does, how that can affect your end-of-life care or even benefit you. I mean, some people sadly think that hospice care and palliative care is a lesser option than aggressive therapy or treatments in a hospital setting, and it's not it's a specialty in its own right. It's not a lesser level of care. There is still caregiving. There is still medical involvement, but the objectives have shifted somewhat.
Yep. Let's
from extending life to quality of life.
No, let's go straight to that. I'm continuing as we move through this hour to sort of unpack as best I can why people don't want to have these conversations about death and dying and grieving and certainly end of life issues and hospice care. Why we don't want to have them. One of the issues I raised earlier, as you recall, is that if you think it's something that you cannot afford, then it makes it harder to get into the conversation. Number one. Number two, I could have started with this, as you mentioned. Nobody wants to talk about or think about dying, even when it's right now, right in front of us. We don't want to think about losing these loved ones. So it's uncomfortable and it's morbid. People don't want to go there to begin with. But now you put your finger on something else that I'm glad you raised, because I was going to get there anyway. So I'm just going to follow you. And that is for some people, and for many people, I suspect. Let me just call a spade a spade. When you talk about hospice care, it comes across as giving up. It comes across as I'm going home to die. And frankly, even with the Carters, I'm thinking now, I don't have it in front of me. I should have pulled it up. I've known President Carter for years. I consider him a friend. He's been a guest on my programs, television and radio, more times than I can count. And so I recall his statement, the statement released by the Carter Center when he decided to go home and to enter hospice. The statement, he basically said the president decided he's not going to, I'm paraphrasing, he's not going to keep taking all these treatments and stay in a hospital forever. He wants to go home. So no matter how creatively that statement is written, how artistically that statement is written, there is this impression that when you say hospice, that means you've given up, you're going home to die. To your point, it's a lesser form of medical intervention. The doctors no longer have anything to do with trying to help heal you, et cetera, et cetera. It seems like a giving up, a giving in. And I wonder if that has anything to do with the fact that people don't want to think about hospice care. Does that make sense?
No, it absolutely makes sense. And that's the way a lot of people feel about it, that hospice is the death sentence.
Yes.
Right? You're in hospice so you are going to die. And yet here we are with President Carter, who has been in hospice now over a year. So that's one myth and one fallacy about hospice care. You know, but it's that chicken and egg situation. People think if you go on hospice, you are going to die. Well, the truth is you are dying, so you have the option to go on hospice. Right? And it's just a different perspective. It's a different way of framing it. And some of the conversations that I've had recently about the Carters is that she fed into the myth that, well, you're dead if you go on hospice, that you're going to die, it's right away, because she actually was only on service, I think it was under 38 hours. So that validated that camp that, well, hospice, you're going to die. But then there was the confusion that, well, actually, he's still alive more than a year after going on hospice. So what could that mean? And what that means is that different disease progressions have a different prognosis. Right? We know a lot about how different diseases and diagnoses progress in their terminal phases. But there's an element that we can't measure, and that's grit, and that's determination, and that's the human spirit. And Jimmy Carter obviously is of a generation that, well, you know what? He's going to do what he's going to do, and we're on his time, and that's okay, and God bless him. But people who are very frail have multiple comorbidities, which means they have multiple life-threatening conditions, and they are very old also. They don't bounce back. And while I can only speculate on why she died very quickly on hospice, was that she was old, frail, had multiple comorbidities. Something happened that was catastrophic for her. That may be a fracture, that may be a pneumonia, that may be a GI bleed. Things happen that would not necessarily be catastrophic for somebody younger, but given her comorbidities, her age, and her frailty, it would be, she has decided that if that day came, she doesn't want to go to the hospital. She wouldn't be eligible for surgery because she wouldn't survive it. She just doesn't want that. She wanted to stay home, be comfortable, die with her husband and her family by her side, as peacefully and with as much grace as possible.
So since we're in this track, tell me more about these myths and misconceptions about hospice, and we'll jump from there.
One of the biggest myths that we see through the Ask an Expert portal is that people will call us, they'll sign up for hospice with their loved ones and go, the nurse is coming once every 2 weeks, we're only getting an aid 3 times a week, and the social worker calls us sometimes. Is this all that it is? I think a lot of people think that, one, hospice is a place, that they're going to go somewhere. Well, no, hospice is a service that comes to you. And two, that the hospice is going to take over the caregiving for your loved one. That you will be able to call hospice at 3 o'clock in the morning if your loved one has a soiled diaper and needs changing, and we'll run out and help with that. And as much as we would love to, that's not going to happen. Hospice was developed initially as a support for family caregivers, not a replacement for that care. And a lot of people have expectations for hospice care that are not really realistic given the benefit the way it is currently structured. That means that family caregivers are going to be involved, whether that's spouses, sons or daughters, friends, neighbor, family. It really is that it's still going to take a village. You still need all of the resources you have around you to help you through that. But we will take your hand and help guide you and help optimize those options. We will get social workers involved, volunteers involved. Of course, we provide grief counseling and psychosocial support for families who are really struggling with the fate of their loved one. So it is a support system. It's something that most people really do find to be of benefit. And of course, financially, caregiving is a burden too. Hospice does supply some of the durable medical equipment that's needed, incontinence supplies, hospital beds. So that can somewhat lift a financial burden off the family. But hospice isn't going to pay room and board in a nursing home. Hospice isn't going to pay for a nurse or a CNA to be at bedside around the clock. That it does not cover those services.
We were talking earlier about the nature of hospice in terms of the expense, and you said something now that made me completely do a 180 in my thinking. On the one hand, staying in the hospital is for too long is too much for many families to navigate through financially. You and I both know that the number one reason most Americans file bankruptcy is what? Healthcare expenses. That's the number one reason people file bankruptcy in this country, healthcare. So clearly, staying in a hospital for a prolonged period of time is expensively burdensome, I should say, for many families. And yet, the flip side of that is what you just made me think about, is that some people end up coming home to die because they can't afford to stay in a facility, and that's a bit tragic to think about as well.
Yeah, it's awful. It's awful. And, you know, there are evolving theories, there are evolving services that are trying to fill that gap. But let's face it, we have a tidal wave of boomers, myself included, who are looking after other boomers, and families don't necessarily live all together in a couple of blocks away anymore. Families are spread across the U.S. and the world. They have their lives. They have their commitments. So the challenge for healthcare is finding fill-in services for those gaps, because you cannot have somebody in their 80s or 90s taking care of somebody else who's in their 80s and 90s who cannot assist with things like turning and repositioning or personal hygiene and care. And currently, there isn't anything that's paid for, right? A lot of big hospital organizations, because we can't house people, dying people, in the hospital, right? We can't. It's too expensive. It's burdensome on the community. It occupies beds, and this sounds brutal, but it's true. It occupies beds for people who they can help, okay, and who are able to go back into the community. So there's like hospital at home that's evolving.
No, it sounds brutal, but it's as real as rain, and it needed to be said. I take your point. When we come forward, I want to pick up on those diverse communities that you referenced earlier. Specifically, I'm talking about Black folk and the ways in which we do or do not navigate quite so well these end-of-life issues and hospice care, etc. We'll talk about that with Angela Novis when we come forward. She's with the Hospice Foundation of America. In fact, she's their chief medical officer, and you're listening to her right now on Tavis Smiley.
More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
Paid for by government.com. Did you know? The United States Mint has issued a new Morgan silver dollar coin in proof condition for the first time. Not only that, they are also minted in 99.9% pure silver for the first time ever in history. Coin experts are calling this an amazing opportunity for anyone that knows the enduring popularity of Morgans. But you must hurry. Only 400,000 of these legal tender silver dollars were issued. These first ever Morgan silver dollars are brand new with stunning mirror-like finish, minted by the iconic San Francisco Mint. Call now and you're guaranteed a new first ever 99.9% pure silver proof Morgan dollar. To learn more, call 1-800-973-9717. If you order now, you will receive a free coin collector bonus pack, a $25 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-973-9717 now to secure your new Morgan silver dollars before they are gone. That's 1-800-973-9717.
Thank you for sharing a part of your Wednesday with us here on the Black Information Network. I'm Mike Moore. Now here's the latest. American missionaries are trapped in Haiti and they're worried no one is coming to rescue them. The Caribbean nation has descended into chaos as gang violence has overtaken the country. One missionary, Jill Dolan, helps run an orphanage in the capital Port-au-Prince and says the U.S. Embassy hasn't been able to provide much help. At the embassy, non-essential personnel have been evacuated and additional Marines have been brought in for security. A Florida man is recovering after getting tapeworm eggs in his brain. A case report published last week says the 52-year-old patient recently told doctors he had been suffering from persistent migraines. A CT scan found tapeworm eggs festering in the man's brain. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Unleash your style in 2024 at FS Cut and Color. Get a fabulous cut and color duo from one of their expert stylists at unbeatable prices. Only at Fantastic Sam's, where hair care meets affordability. Visit FantasticSams.com to find one of their 60 SoCal salons near you.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
A bad night for the Clippers. They lost by 18 at home to Minnesota, and at the end of the first quarter, the Clippers watched Kawhi Leonard walk to the locker room. He did not return. The Clippers medical staff said the team's leading scorer is suffering with back spasms. No word yet on whether Kawhi will be able to play Thursday night at Chicago. The Lakers are back in action tonight at Sacramento. Another critical game for the Lakers. They're trying to get into the 8th and final playoff spot in the Western Conference. At the moment, the Lakers are a game and a half behind Dallas. Tip-off time at 7 p.m. on ESPN. UCLA forward Adine Bona, a 6'10 sophomore from Nigeria, was voted Pac-12 Conference Defensive Player of the Year. Bona averaged 1.8 block shots and played a key role in UCLA, allowing a conference-low 65 points per game. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Are you interested in catching up on all the latest entertainment news, trending topics, and exciting interviews? I got you. Tune in to The Raw Report with Robin Ayers, Monday through Friday, 6 to 7 p.m. I'm your host, Robin Ayers. Join me every weekday with some of the best entertainment contributors in the business as we break down what's going on, who's got next, and what not to miss. Only on The Raw Report with Robin Ayers.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Why settle for ordinary when you can have extraordinary hair? Visit your local SoCal FS Cut and Color salon today and let their team of expert stylists pamper you with affordable luxury. Get a free shampoo with every cut. Book your appointment today at FantasticSams.com.
I'm getting vaccinated with Prevnar 20, a Pfizer vaccine.
So am I, because I'm at risk for pneumococcal pneumonia.
If you're 19 or older with chronic conditions like asthma, diabetes, COPD, or heart disease, or are 65 or older, you are at increased risk for pneumococcal pneumonia. Ask your doctor or pharmacist about Prevnar 20, pneumococcal 20-valent conjugate vaccine. It can help protect you against pneumococcal pneumonia in just one dose. Even if you've already been vaccinated with other pneumonia vaccines, Prevnar 20 may help provide added protection. Prevnar 20 is approved for adults to help prevent infections from 20 strains of the bacteria that cause pneumococcal pneumonia. Continued approval may depend on a supportive study. Don't get Prevnar 20 if you've had a severe allergic reaction to the vaccine or its ingredients. Adults with weakened immune systems may have a lower response to the vaccine. Side effects include pain and swelling at the injection site, fatigue, headache, muscle, and joint pain. For full prescribing information, please call 1-855-213-2138 or visit Prevnar20.com.
eBay Motors is here for the ride. Go ahead, feel your engine. Admire that perfectly installed exhaust. Your vehicle's moving along this freeway like it was made from fresh installs and a whole lot of love. With eBay Motors, you get over 122 million parts to keep it running. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, they'll be the perfect fit every time. Plus, at these prices, well, we're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
If you're looking for the most epic place on Earth, let's start at the base of a massive waterfall. Then trek through the thick jungle. Then climb to the peak of a snowy mountaintop. Then once you get there, keep going. Because with intelligent 4x4 and 7 drive modes and a Nissan Pathfinder, the search is the real adventure.
Available feature. Intelligent 4x4 cannot prevent collisions or provide enhanced traction in all conditions. Always monitor traffic and weather conditions.
Smart talk for curious people just like you. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Angela Novas, who is the Chief Medical Officer at Hospice Foundation of America, talking about these very tricky and thorny and delicate issues, specifically end-of-life issues in hospice. And this issue has been put front and center again for many Americans, courtesy of the Carters, namely former President Jimmy Carter, who is still living and in hospice at age 99. I've joked many times that Jimmy Carter may outlive all of us. He is full of grit and vim and vigor. No other president has been running around for decades building houses. He's a tough cookie, and so of course our thoughts and prayers are always with him while he remains in hospice care again at age 99 rather. His late wife, Rosalind Carter, passed away at 96, not too long ago. But their choice, their decision, and to be so public about it, to leave hospitals and go home for hospice care, to live out their remaining days there, has put this conversation front and center once again for many fellow citizens. And let's just, call it what it is. There are certain communities that have a more difficult time navigating these issues. I suspect there are many reasons for that, but certainly in the African American community, one of these diverse communities, we have to do a much better job of addressing these issues and frankly, knowing when, where, and how to address these issues, and not all at the last minute in moments where people are in pain and people are sad and people are facing reality. That might not be the best time to start having a conversation about your end-of-life wishes. That said, tell me, Angela, what your thoughts are, your takeaways, specifically when it comes to diverse communities like Black America and beyond, trying to navigate these again very delicate issues.
Yeah, there's a lot of hurdles, predominantly resulting from the breach of trust that many African Americans feel they've been subjected to historically. Mm-hmm. And, frankly, I wouldn't trust us either. But I might trust somebody in my community who has experience, and I might trust somebody who I already have a relationship with to bridge the opportunity for those conversations, okay? So I feel that if we can engage people in an honest conversation, we're at that point of where there is a potential for action. If we don't have the conversation, there isn't going to be any action. HFA for the last, I'm going to say almost 4 years now, or maybe 3, we've been involved with an NIH-sponsored trial. Mm-hmm. We partner with Penn State College of Medicine. It's called the Project Talk trial. We understand the barriers of reaching, in this trial at least, the African American communities and the Hispanic communities. We know that we are not trusted partners in their community. We are the white coat researchers who were showing up in a paternalistic way, perhaps it may be interpreted that way, and trying to reach them on their ground, right?
Mm-hmm.
So these trusted community partners are facilitating us going in. We send out research teams. We're engaging people from diverse backgrounds and diverse areas of the country across the United States. And gamification of discussions of uncomfortable topics is becoming big right now, okay? It's low stress. It's not confrontational. We invite groups from the local communities to come and sit with us and play a game where they get to discuss topics surrounding end-of-life care and death and grief, but without it being about them, so they can disassociate a little bit from it, which may give them a comfort level. And we really are getting a lot of valuable data as to how we can reach these communities. Will our interventions make that easier transition from conversation to action? Will it be something they'll accept or reject? We're doing a similar project with people who have autism. They're not very well represented in the healthcare system. I mean, they're just not. And we need more diverse healthcare providers who can, if you're sick and you're afraid, and it's not about color necessarily, race or religion, but you need somebody who you can look at and take a breath out with. This person gets me. And it can be challenging for people who don't look like you, don't come from around where you come from, to walk in a paternalistic way and try and tell you about your life, your health, your decision. We have to do better at meeting people where they are. And hospice is all about meeting people where they are, but we need more people from diverse backgrounds to help us do that.
I've had any number of conversations, you might imagine, in my career about the healthcare system in this country, and specifically issues of cultural competence or the lack thereof when it comes to physicians all across this country. But it took on new meaning for me when some years ago I was in charge of caregiving for a particular person who was aged and infirm. And they had been in the hospital and eventually, thankfully, were able to come home. They wanted, like everybody else, they wanted to die at home. And we worked with a service to come into the home to help out this particular person. And they started sending us people who didn't look like this person. To be exact, the person was black. And they would send us a bunch of white folk. And I have nothing against the good white folk. If you're in this field and you care about people, I'm happy for that. But there was a cultural disconnect on a number of different fronts. And I literally had to work overtime to find some black folk to come into this house to help this particular person navigate through these issues, because it wasn't going to work otherwise. And so I take your point loud and clear about these cultural competency issues and why certainly in hospice care that would matter to someone, that there's a cultural connect and not a cultural disconnect. When we come forward, speaking of culture, I am curious, as the audience has been listening to you for 45 minutes now, they have picked up on the fact that you have a very nice accent. And I am curious as to whether or not this issue or these issues that we have in this country, the difficulty we have talking about end-of-life issues and palliative care and hospice care, whether or not that is uniquely American, or whether or not people all around the world are wrestling with the same kinds of issues. We'll talk about that and a bit more between now and the top of the hour with our guest, Angela Novas, who's the Chief Medical Officer at Hospice Foundation of America, who you're listening to right now, excuse me, on Tavis Smiley.
You're listening to Tavis Smiley. Tavis Smiley. Ranked number 45 on the Heavy 100 list of the 100 most important radio talk show hosts in America.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
So you just used bug spray in your home. Now what? Well, between the waiting and waiting for things to dry up and keeping your family away from the mess, it hits you. You could have used Zevo. Unlike other bug sprays that stick around, Zevo goes from kill to clean in seconds. Plus, it's safe for use around people and pets when used as directed. Zevo, people-friendly, bug-deadly.
The thing no one tells you about periods is that your flow changes every day, and so should your tampon size. Tampax has 5 absorbencies to match your changing flow. If it hurts to remove, go down a size. If it leaks, go up a size. Only Tampax has a leak guard braid to help give you up to 100% leak and odor-free protection. All-day comfort and protection for under $5 a month. Based on average U.S. consumer usage at manufacturer suggested price. However, pricing is at the sole discretion of the retailer. Excludes 8-count packs.
Sometimes we lose, sometimes we win. Sometimes we try to fit it all in. Sometimes we don't know what's in store. Sometimes we find what we're looking for. Sometimes we're rolling easy and free. Sometimes 1 and 1 makes 3. So much to love along this ride. That's why Nationwide is on your side.
Nationwide Mutual Insurance Company and Affiliates, Columbus, Ohio.
If you love to travel, Capital One has a rewards credit card that's perfect for you. With Venture X, earn unlimited double miles on everything you buy and turn everyday purchases into extraordinary trips. Plus, receive premium travel benefits like access to over 1,300 airport lounges where you just check in and chill out. Open up a world of possibilities with Capital One. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. Lounge access is subject to change. See CapitalOne.com for details.
It's game day at Jim's house, and the spread is impressive.
Mike's already done some damage with the hot wings, and now he's dropping back and going deep for another slice of pizza.
I sure hope he brought the Pepto.
Mike knows the Pepto-Bismol provides fast 5-symptom relief from unexpected stomach upsets. He's no rookie.
The way he's throwing back those nachos, he's the GOAT.
Be ready for game day with Pepto-Bismol.
When you have nausea, heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach,
diarrhea. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
Let's get back to more of Tavis Smiley right now.
Just a footnote, if I will, if I can, before we move forward, about what I was sharing with a moment ago, sharing with you about this particular person who I was in charge of getting some in-home care for. And you heard, I guess, Angela Novak say earlier that this industry, the hospice care industry, has to do better at serving people of color and, frankly, a better job of finding people of color to serve in these capacities and positions. We know across the country that there's a shortage of doctors, a shortage of nurses. People just got burnt out during the pandemic, and we know that in the years to come, the data tell us that that shortage is going to get worse before it gets better. But here's some data specifically about black folk and hospice care. African Americans make up about 12% of the U.S. population. About 12% of this country are we, and yet we make up only 8.5% of hospice patients. Many studies have shown that African Americans and members of other underrepresented groups tend to utilize hospice less often than their white counterparts. You heard Angela make that point earlier. The data also tell us that black folk are less likely to complete advanced directives. Still, other studies report that African Americans prefer more aggressive therapies at the end of life. including mechanical ventilation, feeding tubes, and other things, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This data that I wanted to share, Angela, pretty much underscores everything we've said in this conversation. Again, we know that black people use hospice care less, number one. We know, as I said earlier, we got to do a better job of this. We know that we are less likely to complete advanced directives. We got to do better about that. And we know from this data that black folk prefer more aggressive therapies at the end of life, which ties in that conversation earlier, that if you see hospice as giving up and going home to die, that ain't working for black folk, Angela. So that data kind of underscores everything we've talked about in this conversation, does it not?
Oh, it absolutely does, and it's all intertwined. And there are a lot of barriers, okay, to getting hospice care. And I just wanted to point out that there are cultural, racial, religious, philosophical barriers, but finances doesn't have to be one.
Right.
And that's really important to mention, I think, too, that hospice is available to everyone. It's covered under Medicare, Medicaid, completely. If you don't have any insurance at all, if you are here without documentation, you can get hospice help. There is charity care under hospice that can be available to you. And I'm not saying it's not going to be a little bit harder to find, and you may have to call around more agencies because a lot of people do take advantage of that charity care. But it shouldn't be the barrier. And the earlier you have a conversation about those barriers and about your wishes, the easier it will be for people to assist you in finding ways around them. And again, it goes back to, if we can't have the conversation, we'll never have the action. And if we can have a conversation about how we can attract more people of color and from different ethnicities into being hospice care providers, and not just the CNAs, but the medical directors and the nurse practitioners. And by the way, kudos to African American women who are nurses, who are going on to be nurse practitioners and to receive their doctorates in nurse practitioner is phenomenal, and it's really encouraging.
No, I should add right quick before we get to our final moments with Angela. Right quick here. There are other factors that the data tell us that also contribute to low rates of end of life care planning amongst black people. At work, as we know, there's a strong faith in God. We just trust God to carry us through. And if it's our time, it's our time. And so we don't plan as we perhaps should. And, of course, a reliance on loved ones to make these important decisions. And there's always a deference, finally, to elders. If that's what they want, that's what it's going to be. So those factors also make their way into this conversation when we talk about black people and end-of-life issues. Our remaining moments with Angela Noves, Chief Medical Officer at Hospice Foundation of America, when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Seeking the truth, speaking the truth. This is the Tavis Smiley Show.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. Stay Housed LA has the resources you need to know your rights and the legal support to back them up. The COVID-19 pandemic has cost people their jobs and livelihoods. This has left an estimated 1/3 of households not being able to make rent and facing losing their homes. This is a fear no one in our community should have to face. You have rights, though, and Stay Housed LA is here to help. Stay Housed LA is a partnership between the County of Los Angeles, the City of Los Angeles, and local community and legal service providers. Together, they provide tenants with the information and support needed to exercise their rights so they can remain safely in their homes. Find out more about your rights by participating in a virtual tenant workshop. Get the legal assistance you need. Find additional resources in Los Angeles County and the City of Los Angeles. Stay connected to Stay Housed LA County for updates. This and more at stayhousedla.org. Stay connected to Stay Housed LA for updates. This and more at stayhousedla.org. That's stayhousedla.org. Or call their hotline at 213-694-0040. We've got your black with a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Hey there, Los Angeles. This is James Lucky Jr., publisher and editor of Los Angeles News Observer. Are you hungry for news that matters to you in the African-American communities of Los Angeles? Well, buckle up, because we got the scoop you've been craving. Stay in the know and never miss a beat with our free weekly publications conveniently available near you. Or hop on the digital wave and become an exclusive subscriber at OGNSC.com. Don't forget to join the party on Instagram and Twitter at OGNSCINC for behind-the-scenes access and sizzling updates. No more FOMO. Let's stay informed, connected, and empowered together.
He's rooting for everybody black. Everybody black. More of Tavis Smiley coming your way right now.
I'm rooting for black folk during life and end of life. I'm rooting for everybody black and everybody else for that matter who may be in a situation where they need hospice care. So I've been just thrilled and honored to have had in this conversation for the hour Angela Novas, who's the Chief Medical Officer at Hospice Foundation of America, a conversation that's become front and center once again thanks to the Carters and how public they've been about their hospice care. I got about 3 minutes left here, less than 3 minutes actually, Angela. I want to close by asking the question that I teed up earlier, which is whether or not this is a uniquely American thing, or do folk around the globe have as much difficulty as we do preparing for end-of-life transitions?
It's not exclusive to America. I wish I could say it was. Yeah. But I do think it's discuss death and wishes is probably a little bit more openly discussed, certainly in some of the communities and countries that I've lived in before coming to America.
Yeah, there's
a little bit more comfort with it.
Yeah, can you put your finger on why that might be?
I don't know. I think it's because maybe social cues, taking prompts from media. Yeah. I recall I never had a formal conversation with either of my parents about what their needs were or desires were at end of life.
Right.
But it would be discussed watching TV shows. And when the time came, I didn't feel like I didn't carry a burden of not knowing the decisions that I made were what they would have wanted because we joked about it previously or we discussed it during TV shows or movies.
Yep. Well, death, dying, and grief, as I said earlier, are as real as rain. And the better prepared we are for these transitions, the better we will all be. We'll leave it there. Angela Novas is Chief Medical Officer at Hospice Foundation of America, and we are thankful for her input in this conversation. Angela, all the best to you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for your work. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
Thank you for sharing a part of your Wednesday with us here on the Black Information Network. I'm Mike Moore. Now here's the latest. American missionaries are trapped in Haiti and they're worried no one is coming to rescue them. The Caribbean nation has descended into chaos as gang violence has overtaken the country. One missionary, Jill Dolan, helps run an orphanage in the capital Port-au-Prince. T-Scan found tapeworm eggs